Hi everyone, it's Tamara here with another card making tutorial. This time I'm using the stamp set from Sweet November Stamps called Mermaid Emotions, created for this month's Mermaid celebrations. I stamped the image out on Copic XPress at Cardstock and cut it out with a stitch or rectangle die in a landscape form, and I also stamped it onto some masking paper. I'm going to create her by chopping out a section that's going to form my ground, so where my sand is that she's laying on, so that I can mask that off, and I'll be colouring that with Copic colours, but I'll be doing some ink blending at the top for that dark water. So I'm going to just fussy cut this out now, so going along the line that's going to form my sand, and then just trimming up around the actual tail. I have sped this up as I'm quite a slow fussy cutter, so I'm just going around right along the black line because we don't want any kind of white halo around our image, and along that sand line. Now obviously there's a couple of openings in her around her where her tail is, so I'm just grabbed a kind of a cutting mat and a cutting knife, and I'm just now going to cut out those little openings so that when I ink blend it will also put that color in amongst her tail as well, just trimming that up to make sure that there's no kind of white halo again. So now that that's cut out, I'm going to just use her hair. So I always choose one part of the image, normally the most intricate part, to line up first, and then line everything up and give that a good press down before I start my ink blending. So I'm just going to move that across and get my inks ready. I'm going to be using Tumbled glass, Salvaged patina, Peacock feathers, chipped sapphire, and black soot. I've got my dome sponge applicators all ready to go, and I've taken off all my lids. So I'm going to start from my lightest colour first, so the tumbled glass just over in this section. So this is kind of where most of the light's coming from. Then I'm going to go in with my Salvaged patina and just blend between those two colours until I've got a nice smooth blend. And once I'm happy with that, I'll bring in the Peacock feathers to go over that Salvaged patina. I'm just working in circular motions to get a nice smooth blend between each of the colours, so going back and forth until I'm happy with that blend. Then we'll bring in our chipped sapphire to go over where our peacock feathers are, still going through those colours. So now the chipped sapphire, as I said, just working in those little circular motions between those colours. We'll go back between the peacock feathers and the chipped sapphire, getting that nice smooth blend between the two. Sorry that some of this is a little bit off camera. And then I'll just bring that Salvaged patina in. And finally, the colour up in the top right hand corner is just a little bit of black soot to really darken up that edge. So not very much, but just a little bit there. Then work that in with our chipped sapphire. Bring that peacock feathers back in and just keep working between the colours until I'm happy with that blend. Bring back that Salvaged patina and the tumbled glass. Now I thought I just wanted a little bit of a smoother blend between where the chipped sapphire and the peacock feather is, so I'm going back in with that chipped sapphire and that peacock feathers, the Salvaged patina, and I'm much happier with that blend. I'm just going to go up just that little bit at the top to make sure that kind of circles around that light colours up to the dark. So just keep working until you are happy with your blend. We'll pull off the mask and we'll set that aside to dry. Now that that's dry, I'm going to do my colouring. So I'm going to colour up the sand first and make sure I get that the way I'm liking. So I'm putting the lightest colour down first, the E30, and then we'll work our way up. So I'm going to go in now with my darkest brown marker that I'll be using. So obviously she'll be throwing a shadow underneath her body. And then just to ground the scene, I'm just putting that along the base and the edges of that sand. We'll blend that out with E43. So not only the ones that go around her, but also underneath her and just kind of at the back of her here. Just kind of trying to get a smooth blend between those colours. We'll bring in our sand colour, the E33. So we'll have all the markers, the lids up the top left hand side, but also they will be noted in the description box below for you as well if you need to refer to any of the colours I use. Our second lightest colour, our E31, to blend out that E33, slowly working into that highlight space. And then we'll bring that first marker back in, the E30. Just working into our highlight space to try and get a nice smooth blend. Now I do want to make a kind of darker, watery colour to this right hand side so that it does look like she's really deep down in the dark depths of the water. So I brought in my BG markers. So my darkest for that ground is the BG 78. Blend that out with the BG 75. Then the BG 53, also blending that into that top section as well, just slowly working into those brown markers that I've already put on and trying to just move my hand back to get a smoother blend where that comes around down the bottom. So you'll see me move my hand back to just try and get that nice soft blend. Now I'm going to bring those darker markers in. So this did take a little bit of working together between the colors to get the blend that I was wanting for this sand. So you just have to kind of work between until you get that nice blend that you're wanting. So I'm going to go through all those colors again at the E44 to the E43, just slowly working it into that blue that we've put in there as well, just to really deepen that section up. Go in with our E33 again to blend that out. Going into those sides. Bring our E31 to blend that out into our highlight space. Slowly working that to get that nice smooth blend. And then finish that off with our E30, our lightest color for our highlight. Now we'll bring back in those blues to make sure we get that reinforced with that darker bluey color to our sand over on this side. Just putting a little bit of the BG 78, blend that out with our BG 75, so using a little bit more of the BG 75. Blend that out with our BG 53. And you can see me moving my hand back, just trying to get that smoother blend down the bottom. And then we'll blend that finally out with our BG 11 until we've got that nice kind of transition from the blue to the browns. I'm just going to reinforce that brown a bit to get that smoother with the E33. So I'm not going to use my darker markers, just the 33, the 31, and finally the 31 to get that smoother blend out. And that's our ground done. Now we'll start doing our main character. So obviously she's kind of got her head down. So I'm going to have that kind of in shadow down the bottom left hand side, and right down the bottom of her skin will be in shadow far away from any light source. So now just throwing the shadow where her hair will throw some shadow, just down that side that's kind of tucked down and near her arms. Just go along the base of that body, putting our darkest color in, our E04. We'll blend that out with the E11, working out into our highlight space. Most of this will be in shadow, so I'm coloring most of that section down the bottom in with that E11. Not forgetting those fingers where her little bikini top will throw some shadow as well. Blend that out with the E01. Slowly working to where her highlight will be on her cheek and nose, and the top of her arm and shoulder, and the back. So we'll bring in that lightest color again, the E00, to go into our highlight. So now we'll organize to do our eyes. I always like to put a little bit of color on the whites of the eye, so I'm going in with my C markers first, so C3, C1 and C00 to get some shadow in that white iris, and then we'll go in with the colouring the little bikini. I'm kind of going in with the light browns, E97, 95 and 93, but wasn't giving me a bit of the shadow that I'm wanting, so I grabbed my E08 to put that main shadow in. Forgo the 97 and just went the E95 and 93. And just a little bit on her little string tie that's holding that together. And now we'll get her eye. Now that that C marker has dried for her little whites of her eyes, we'll put some blue in to give her some nice blue eyes to match in with what we'll do her tail. And I did colour over a little bit of the catch light, so I'm just going to use my jelly roll pen to pop those back in. Now we'll get her hair coloured up. So I'm going in with my lightest marker just to kind of work out where my shadows are going to be. So obviously where her hair rolls, I'm putting some darker shadows in where that kind of is the waviness of her hair. So now we'll go in with our darkest colour, which will be the E79, to darken up where those kind of the valley of her wavy hair will be. And obviously anything that's in shadow behind the flower at the base of her hair will be in shadow, so we want to make sure we put that in there. Blend that out with our E77, so I'm slowly flicking out either way for our E77 from our E79, just working into what will be our highlight space. So obviously this will be quite in shadow where that tucks behind her head. And the E77, don't forgetting around that flower. The E74 is next, so this will be quite in shadow in that little kind of divot inside that curl on the front of her head. Just working up slowly, just in little flick motions up into that highlight space on either side of where we put the darkest marker. Obviously around that flower and down into that darker area at the base of her hair. And we'll bring the original colour back in. Now I'm going to go over again with the markers, so I want to make sure my highlight area stays nice and light, so I'm just going to leave that. I'm not going to fully colour that up, and we'll just do one final pass of that once we go through all of these colours. So I'm bringing that darker marker in just to reinforce those shadows, so the E79. So just going over exactly the same way I coloured it before. And we'll blend that out with our E77. Just trying to work in little sections so I don't forget anything. I do end up forgetting that little bit of a curl that comes around near her eye on the right side, but I'll bring that in later and colour that up. Now we'll blend that out with our E74, slowly working into that highlight. So just flicking up to where our highlight's going to be. So it'll be in shadow down the bottom. And now we'll get our lightest colour in, our E71. So now we'll colour that fully in, but because I didn't colour that previously, it just makes it look a lot brighter with just the one pass of our E71 over that very edge of her hair. Now I did miss that little curl as I said before, so we'll just go through those same colours again just to colour that out. So near the flower will be the darkest, and then kind of coming to a lighter end. So now we'll get colouring with her tail. So I'm going in with my lightest colour first just to work out where I kind of want all my shadows and darker parts to be. And now we'll go in with our darkest marker that we're going to use as our base, which is our B75. Then bring in our BG53. So we're just kind of using the same markers that we use for that sand. The blue portion of our sand at the bottom, so this all kind of ties in nicely. Blend that out with our BG11, and I'm going to leave those ends because I want them to look really nice and translucent, so you can see I'm only going to go partially over those with the lightest colour, and I'm going to now reinforce all our colours. So I'm going to bring in the darker BG78 for that tail. And I'm not using that BG78 for the base of the tail, so because I will be doing some like steepling in with my pens. Now I've grabbed out my BG53 with my BG75 just to do some tip to tip just to make sure I get a nice smooth blend between these two colours. So there's a little bit of a gap between the 75 and BG 53. Just slowly working them together. Just now go over with that BG 53 to blend that out. Bring in our BG 11, just working up into our highlight. And then we'll bring in our lightest colour, which will be our BG 10, to go over the rest of that tail. Just love this B combination, it's so pretty, the BGs. Now I'm going to bring those colours in again. So the darkest colour, as I said, I didn't use that for the bottom because I wanted to do this little kind of stippling with the BG 78 just to create like a little bit of texture and scaling to her tail. So I'm just slowly dotting that in to the actual fluke, the base of the fluke, so it's going to be darker down the bottom. So most of my colours are down the bottom, and then I just pop a couple little ones as we move up into that lighter cardstock. But mainly our most concentrated portion will be down the very bottom. Then we'll pop in our BG 53, so that's why I like to actually put a little bit of colour down first, but not the darkest colour, so that you can add this little stippling at the end, slowly working up the colours into the lighter colours that you have. And now we'll finish off with that BG 11. Now we'll do the flower. I'm going to keep all these colours the same, so we're just doing the same colours throughout. So BG 78 for the shadow areas, blend that out with the BG 75 and then the BG 53. And we'll just have the very ends, the lightest, for our BG 10 to go on. So it looks like they're getting a little bit of a light on those ends. And then I'll just use some yellow marker Y18 just to add some kind of yellowy orange. Now, due to how long the actual video would be because of the length of colouring that this took to do, I didn't worry about videoing myself doing the stamping and heat embossing of the sentiment, or just adding the little fishes to the background, as I'm sure you've seen me do that multiple times. With the fishes to the background, the darker ones on the right were with some Onyx black ink, and the lighter ones I did with the actual a smoky grey ink from VersaFine. And now I'm just adding some kind of sand details to the sand. So on the right hand side in the brown, I added E44 and E33 just to get some texture. And now I'm just adding the darker blues, the BG 78 and 75 to the blue section. I actually adore this image of Meh. I just find her so funny, just that look on her face and how she's just laying on the ground. So I thought she would be perfect for this kind of dark, deep ocean scene. I hope you've enjoyed this card making tutorial. If you have, please hit the like button. And if you'd like to see any future videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy Mermaid. Bye.